Hello, my name is Alan Fisher and I started our Kyojin business in 2015 around Kyojin Stewhouse, Tagoshi Ginza, the original shop. Small, cozy. It has a slightly different vibe now than when I was here, but the heart still beats the same, I would say. The mission of Kyojin Stewhouse is to use food as a doorway to share a little bit of Irish culture. We try to keep it as authentic and as traditional as possible. And there's a lot of bars and pubs in Japan that serve, your standard pub food here as well, be the fish and chips and so on. So we don't use a fryer, we don't sell fried food. It's all freshly baked breads and homemade soups and stews. That'll be the core of our menu. And that's the heart of Irish food is freshly baked breads, homemade soups and stews. And we can add in a little bit of Irish culture and differentiate ourselves from all the other kind of Irish pubs and bars around and have a more food-focused business.
今お店の営業日が土日祝日だけなんですけど、オンラインストアを始めて、巨人ストアで、もともとはアランさんも東京にいてが、やっぱりもうちょっと大きいキッチンが欲しくなって、で、場所を探して島根に移ったんですけど。
I was thinking if we are really we need to get out of Tokyo because the stew house is too small. We can't do a restaurant and an online store from that location. We need a production kitchen and a storage area outside of Tokyo. And if we're going to do that, then why not go somewhere which has the strongest historical connection to Ireland, which would be Matsue in Shimane. And that historical connection is through Kyojin Stewhouse, the Irish-Greek writer who came. There's a fascinating life story. And his legacy still looms everywhere in that city. You walk around Matsue and you can see statues dedicated to him. It definitely adds more authenticity for us to be based there from a cultural perspective. So for the beef and Guinness, for example, what we'll be doing, how we go through the process of cooking that is you need to get a good cut of beef. And for, of course, it's a stew, so you don't want anything too expensive. You want the kind of chewier meat, you want the beef chuck. Beef shoulder. So you get that chopped into big chunks. I think that's where I remember I went to Tokyo Soup Stock and I ordered their Tokyo borscht and I measured how many bits of meat was in their Tokyo borscht, the beef one. And they had these tiny little cubes of beef. I think it was like average 1.5 bits of meat in their soups. So I said, no, I want something that I would eat at home. We get the chunks we want and we get them seasoned salt and pepper and then onto a hot pan, some oil and butter, and we let them char in the pan a little bit and then we take them off, get that into our pot and then we make our roux. Typically we'd be using a Guinness roux, so you get your flour in with some butter and onions. Use the onions to take the flavour off the pan, and then you get your flour in on top of that. Very careful that once that comes together, you need to get the cold Guinness in on top of that so that it doesn't get lumpy.
We made this gallery book. It's an explanation about Ireland and our history, our restaurant. あとこれが私の絵の紹介。いろいろ。And some Gaelic words. お客さんもすごい突っ込まれるんですけど、アイルランドの語のことを知ってる人もあんまり日本だといないので面白いと思います。この本はアランさんが書いた本で、アイルランドの伝説、巨人の伝説があるので、そこから巨人のシチューハウスの巨人を撮ってるんですけど、In Tokyo we have this small Irish library. So this small door, it's an entrance of the fairy tree. So I painted this tree and Alan painted this door. And we have the same tree and same door in Matsue. Of course, it's bigger than here, but yeah.
make your roux. You're going to put all that into the pot. On top of your meat, you'll already have your veg, your onions, your carrots, and your herbs. In particular, we use thyme and bay leaves for our beef and Guinness. Of course, whenever you're cooking a beef and Guinness, like Guinness is going to have a bit of bitterness. There's many different ways that you can take the bitterness out of the beef and Guinness stew. I've seen recipes where you've got dates, or where you add in other fruits for kind of a bit of sweetness. I've seen people with marmalade, jam, and so on. But anything play it safe. What we do is we use a little bit of tomato puree, and we put in a spoonful of brown sugar in on top of our herbs. That just takes the kind of the deep taste from the Guinness out. Some people like that, but to keep it standard, to keep it traditional the way I would eat it growing up, that's the recipe I use for the beef and Guinness.
The Irish coffee, it's like normal black coffee. It's a bit sweetened. We use brown sugar in this case, and we add whiskey, which makes it like, of course, Irish whiskey, which makes it the Irish whiskey on the top. Some whipped cream, and in this restaurant we use like different flavors. It could be like vanilla, the original spice, and the chocolate.
In an Irish seafood cheddar, you can put in anything you want. So, for example, when I was growing up, I loved kind of the whitefish, I loved the salmon. But once I moved down to Matsue in Shimane, beside Lake Shinji, which is famous for the shijimi clams, the small clams, it made perfect sense to take some of those local clams. Actually, outside the stew house, through the window you can see the fishermen fishing on the Ohashi River. 3 days a week they're only allowed to do it to maintain the stocks within the water. You can see them fishing for the shijimi clam. So that's kind of the star of the seafood cheddar now over the last 6 months. We got the whitefish in there, we got some salmon, freshly harvested shijimi from Lake Shinji or the Ohashi River, and we put that into the seafood cheddar as well. When I look back over the nearly 8 years, there's only 1 year where our sales dipped. Obviously, when you open your first, you get a boon of sales in the first few months, but then that kind of drops down. And I remember in the second year was particularly difficult, so put together a plan for a few different businesses. One, we started an import and wholesale side of our business, where we started taking over some beers from Ireland and trying to wholesale them into different pubs and bars. And up until 2016, that was I would say it was very difficult. The barriers to entry within the alcohol wholesale business in Japan is incredibly difficult. It's such a fragmented market with so many long established players. It's very tricky. Another important part of the business that I identified, particularly in 2017, was the potential of online sales. Japan is very unique in terms, well, I can't speak globally, I don't know what the situation is in many countries, but I know in Ireland that this situation definitely does not exist. Is that the delivery options you have in Japan are fantastic. You have several companies who can provide just dry shipping, chilled shipping, frozen shipping, and the percentage of damaged goods that arrives is very, very small. They're always on time, and just the quality of the delivery services provided in Japan is amazing. So that was very clear at the time. I was thinking, well, maybe this is a way forward, like e-commerce. That's another new sales channel that we could develop. So in 2017, I remember we got a vacuum packer and we bought a rapid chiller where you can take your soups or stews, for example the seafood cheddar, you could freeze that, and then we applied through the Japanese government to get the permission to ship frozen food. So that was back in 2017. But then we had it on a long finger, you know. It was always on the never, especially as we focused more on the whole side of the business, the beers and import and wholesale, because I felt that had the stronger opportunity, and I didn't know too much about the e-commerce side of things. But then the pandemic, you know what I mean? The place is dead. Pandemic's hit. There's nobody coming to the restaurant. Let's go for it. Push full ahead. Let's bring our plans for the Kyojin store. Let's go for it. Let's get it done. and we launched the online store the 8th of April 2020. So it was 2 months of just pure chaos, trying to figure out our boxes, the size of boxes, the packaging, the labels, and so on. And I remember that the sales those first 2 months carried us for a while, which was incredible. And that's when my eyes opened. I said, well, that's the future for our business. I want to get to a place, and we're not there yet, I want to get to a place where the Kyojin store, the online side of our business, will sustain us, will give us that financial security, and the restaurants will become a product showcase to showcase our authentic Irish food and that we care about sharing Irish culture.
This is the character of this street. So yeah, you can see him everywhere in the street. この八百屋さんはすごくお世話になっていて、戸越で使う野菜は全部ここの使ってます。There's another meat shop there, and that oden shop is very popular. あと皆さんやっぱり巨人のシチューハウスを知ってくださってますし、あとお店同士もすごく仲良くてつながっていろいろ紹介し合ったり助け合ったりしてるので。
友達ね、いろんな友達を連れてきて食べるんでもいろんなね、一人じゃないのよ。あんた食べに行く連れてってだからさ。